Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, excuse me, let's go over NVIDIA. Let's talk about what is happening, what we can expect moving forward and all that good stuff. So if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, well, I do share my thoughts with our members every single day as the market is trading for just $3 a month. That's all it is, which includes all my Tesla updates on YouTube. It's a YouTube membership. Link is below in the description. For just $3 a month, $5 adds NVIDIA to that, $7 adds non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stock. So essentially everything but when I see opportunities worth sharing. And on the weekend, I do chart requests with members on Discord. But jumping into it, NVIDIA with another nice day, actually 1.73%, a bit stronger than I expected. I'll be completely honest with you, right? Bears definitely had a chance. I'll go over that right now. Is it nullified? Pretty close. It is actually pretty close to being nullified. So let's go over that. I want to start off exactly with that, actually, because I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering, because I mentioned how, the Bears have a real shot at this, right? Because, technically speaking, we were making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher high, lower low. And the Bears had a real shot with this sort of potential bearish kind of dead catty vibe to come into the fibs, either the 618 or the 786 fibs, and then get a rejection and make, at the very least, equal lows or fresh lows, right? Unfortunately for the Bears, and fortunately for the Bulls, they're definitely fumbling. I'll be completely honest. I expected them to not fumble. Not that I was playing it, but just, I'm just kind of observing, right? I'm just observing. I actually have no position on NVIDIA. I'm just observing. I'm just updating it. No bias whatsoever. Again, I'm not long or short, so I have no bias whatsoever, which kind of helps me give nice unbiased analysis. At least I try to. But the Bears had a real shot, right? Obviously not every single type of situation works out. Not every single type of potential dead cat or whatever, bear flag, whatever. Not all of them are going to work out. But the Bears had a real shot, and they definitely fumbled this opportunity. So I'm not going to lie, it's not looking too good for the Bears here, at least for now, right? So I'm going to remove this for now. I think that situation essentially has been more or less avoided. The next thing I'll be looking for is this. Now, there is two different things that can happen right here or right now. So let's go ahead and draw this right here, kind of on the 1 hour, right? This area, there is still one final chance for Bears here, and this would be a potential double top. Now, again, I definitely have to give the Bulls the upper hand here, but it's still worth mentioning where we kind of have potential double top that looks something like this, right? Double top pattern. It's an okay pattern. I wouldn't say it's my favorite in the entire world, but it's definitely not the worst in the entire world either, right? Double top, obviously looks something like this. It's pretty straightforward in my opinion, where you get a double resistance at pretty much the same exact level, and you have a neckline, right? And the neckline, of course, is going to be pretty much this one right here. So, in other words, as long as NVIDIA is pretty much below, in my opinion, about the 174-ish region, 174, 174.2, something like that, right? As long as it's below that, there is potential for this double top. But again, the only way this double top actually gets triggered is losing this neckline right here, which in other words would be NVIDIA losing 165 again. So that's kind of what would trigger that, right? However, if Bears cannot defend pretty much 174-ish, which, we're pretty much there. Let's see how it goes. Then the Bulls will take full control. And what I will see from a bullish perspective, if the Bulls really do take control, which, again, it's hard not to give them the benefit of the doubt. The stock has been on a rampage, would be essentially a break above 174, something like this, come back, retest, and hold, and then obviously continue higher, right? That's what I would see. And this right here, if you're, obviously a bull and you want to long the stock, would be a potentially good opportunity because, the risk reward would be pretty favorable. You have a nice little stop loss right down here, for instance, and, you ride the wave up, right? If obviously momentum seems to be in the bullish favor, which in that case it would be, you ride the wave up with a pretty nice stop. Your risk reward, in my opinion, in that kind of scenario, yeah, it's not too bad, right? It's not too bad. So let's continue monitoring that. Let's see how that actually unfolds. But that's going to be the main two kind of things I'll be looking for NVIDIA. Bears already fumbled what seemed to be a pretty phenomenal opportunity. I'm honestly a little bit shocked that they fumbled it. That seemed like, man, that was a good opportunity for the Bears there. Like, man, if there was a chance for them to really, at least short term, turn this ship around and get one more low, which in that case would have still been a bullish pattern, like a bull flag, but nonetheless, still get at least some piece of the pie. That was their opportunity there. The fact that they fumbled that, yeah, pretty disappointing from the bearish perspective. I'll be completely honest with you. So the next thing we're watching is this. 174, again, give or take a few cents naturally, right? It's not exactly 174, 174, 174.2, something like that. But again, either we get a rejection here and we get a double top, which in that case, losing 165 will trigger it, or we break above 174, come back, retest it, make it a support, very important, because you can get false breakouts. The thing is, the reason I say support that's important like this, and then you have like a nice stop, is because you can have liquidity sweeps, right? And this is why trading is not like the easiest thing. It's like, oh my God, you just buy a support and you know, you can get liquidity sweeps. You can get a move to the upside that ends up creating massive liquidity. Bears close, bulls enter, and then of course it just reverses and ends up being a massive liquidity sweep, right? You can absolutely get those. The most recent example I can look for that just happened recently was Reddit. Reddit is a pretty good example. Check this out, right? Kind of the same idea. You can see here, look how many wicks existed back here, right? You already know everyone and their mother has stop losses probably just below this line, right? And look how many, that's 3 wicks in a row that went down below it just to close back above it and leaving a very long wick under it. That essentially is a sweep. Just in this case, it's the opposite direction. But that's kind of what I'm talking about, that, it's worth watching for, because, these things happen, right? These things happen. That's why you want, that's why if in this case for NVIDIA, if we go back to the 1 hour, you wanted to not only get back above it, but you wanted to reclaim and hold that support with the stop, let's say down here, for instance, just as an example, to avoid a potential liquidity sweep, because again, they do happen, right? And it's important to understand that kind of situation. But regardless, that's kind of what I'll be looking for the short term, right? Overall, going into the daily chart. Now the daily, this is a very resilient stock, man. I'll be honest, I think if this was like almost any other stock other than Microsoft, I guess Microsoft also being ungodly of a resilience of a stock, absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, NVIDIA, if this was like almost any other stock, I definitely would have expected it to roll over by now, to be completely honest with you. The fact that it isn't rolling over still is very impressive to me. Very long aggressive uptrend, very little room for pullbacks, very little room for people to re-enter on any meaningful pullback. It's just been pretty much up and only up, right, for the most part. So one thing I'll be looking for is, well, we're kind of approaching the top of the rising channel once again. That could be a potential resistance, which, roughly coincides with that 174-ish level. So let's continue watching that. But the thing I'm also looking for is the fact that the MACD is, again, pretty much in the second highest, I guess, elevated territory it has been pretty much in the history of the stock, right? Obviously, the highest was not that long ago here in the 2024 of June, which was, when was that actually? I'm kind of curious now. That was all the way here. That was actually during one of the initial squeezes the stock had. That was probably the highest it's been. And then it had this, second highs back then when it had this squeeze up here closer to the 150s. But now we've set up, the second highest, right? This is the second highest it's pretty much ever been. So, the point I'm just trying to make is the fact that it's elevated, right? It is elevated. Like, it is what it is. The stock is definitely pretty extended. Now, that doesn't mean it has to stop now. It has to drop now, but it is worth mentioning. It is extended. There's no denying that the stock is quite extended here. So the reason I bring that up is because, there is a risk in that kind of scenario involved. Now, again, until NVIDIA really loses the 9 EMA, which it kind of did here, and one candle doesn't make a trend, but especially starts getting several candles underneath and closing underneath the 9 exponential moving average, it's hard to be like bearish on the stock. And at this point, until really proven otherwise, we assume the trend is still going to be up. But the MACD, you can see, is starting to get a little bit of curling action. The histogram, you can see, is starting to get to the lower end of the spectrum. So once this thing turns red, for instance, or if and when it turns red, which it will at some point, there'll be some other potential red flag to watch out for. We're not there yet, though. So I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure or anything like that, but it will eventually. But as of right now, while the 9 EMA is holding and the MACD is still green, we assume the trend is overall going to be up, especially after the bears just fumbled what could have been an opportunity to finally reverse the stock to the downside after an unbelievable rally. So what else is there? That's the main things I'll talk about in that kind of scenario. Now, going over to the weekly very quickly to end off the video here. Yeah, the week started off pretty rough, right? We started off pretty rough. If we closed below 165, that would have been bad, because if you look pretty much on my videos on like Monday or Tuesday, the MACD histogram, this one here, this line right here, this kind of, bar, it was actually making a lower high, right? It was making its first lower high in quite some time. But obviously with the recovery that we've been seeing the rest of the week, it's making unless tomorrow is a massive crash day, which at this point, I highly doubt it, we're probably making another higher high, right? So the reason I bring that up is because in the past, like I've said before, two factors that have halted NVIDIA's very aggressive uptrend, for instance, this one here, or even this one here, has been very nice moves to the upside, but again, SMI is pretty much near the top of the range, right near the top of the range, and the MACD started making lower highs. Once that started occurring, that's when further upside started to be limited, and also bearish presence started to seep into the stock. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. We're not there yet, though, again. So until that happens, we assume the movement is up. We assume the momentum is going to continue up until that happens. But from a weekly perspective, those are something, worth mentioning. Again, in the past, same thing. When it's had euphoric rallies, pretty much the way it's happening right now. And this is a pretty crazy rally, I have to say. Very unbelievable. Wow. I'm very shocked. I'm impressed and shocked at the same time. But nonetheless, something worth mentioning and something we're going to continue monitoring. Clearly, it's not going to be this week, but, could be next week, could be the week after. We just simply don't know. No reason to guess, no reason to try and assume things. Let's just wait. Eventually it'll happen. It's not going to continue going up forever like this and, go from here and all the way up to like $300 per share like this. That's just not how things work. But once it actually happens, once it occurs, which it will eventually, that's when we can start considering, actual downside potential, which in this case, in my opinion, the major area of support will be with the exponential moving averages sitting around 150, give or take, of course, per share. And that's what I'll be looking for if it, of course, once, signs start suggesting that the stock finally wants to take a bit of a breather. Otherwise, yeah, the bulls are still in full control. We're still making higher highs on the histogram. No reason to be bullish or bearish just yet overall, especially when the bears just fumbled that 1 hour play that could have been something, clearly not. But again, for now, let's watch for this potential double top or a reclaim of 174, turn it into support, and then head higher. So yeah, let's continue monitoring it. Bulls are still in control, and let's go from there. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.